All right, guys, getting ready to go to the crusher in the Tushar, and people have been asking me to make a video about it. Well, a few people. This is the first time I'll be doing this, so I'm probably not doing it perfectly, but this is the setup that I'm used to, and I've been kind of experimenting leading up to this event, and so I've kind of come down to what you see here. And so I thought I'd show it to you, show you what I'm using, and then, you know, after the race, maybe see what I did wrong or what I did right. So first things first, I'm on a Trek 920. If you guys watch the channel, you know I've had this bike for a while. I really like it. It's definitely, I would call it a gravel bike, but it's definitely on the mountain bike end of a gravel bike. It can take pretty big tires, and it's pretty long. I think 465 chainstays, so it's on the long side. It's got a pretty low bottom bracket drop, about as low as they come. So a long and stable bike, maybe not the fastest, but you know, I've tested it against my road bike, and I think it's fast enough. And on the gravel, I think I'll enjoy myself more on this than maybe something else. Maybe next year I'll get a faster bike, but this is what I'm used to, so this is what I'm going to roll with. I did change to a 45mm tire. I am on a WTB Riddler 45 with the tan wall. Good thing to know about these tires, they're actually the same as WTB's regular tires in this light version, tubeless version as well, but they are just colored tan, so they're not actually a skin wall. So not the toughest tires out there, but not super lightweight either. And they've held up on my rides, so I'm fairly confident about them. I will say these are on Bontrager Duster Elites. I originally mounted these with the plastic rim strip that you would normally use on these wheels, and you cannot get the tires off if you use that setup. So I actually I talked to WTB. They said to go ahead and remove that plastic rim strip. I actually had to use a vise to get these tires off the rim. So if you're going to use these tires with a Bontrager wheel, go ahead and use some tubeless tape. So I started out with a Whiskey 23mm tape, and it's working fine on the back. I had some issues on the front. I actually don't think 23mm is wide enough for these dusters. So I went with 25mm DT Swiss tape on the front wheel, and that fixed the issues that I had, and I actually think that that's a better width. I'm not going to mess with the back tire just yet, but I do think in the future I'm going to swap that tape out. So those are working great. They roll really fast. Actually took them on our group road ride yesterday. Did 42 miles at 19.8 miles an hour. So I was able to do that on this bike. I think that's good enough. I'm not the fastest guy out there. So I've opted to take 2 bottles. I'm starting out with the Bontrager bottles. They have hand ups, and so I'm probably going to lose these. They're pretty cheap. And they're also small enough they fit well in these cages, so they won't fall out. I'm doing 2 bottles just because there's enough aid stations. That could be a bad decision, but I think that's going to be okay. And then if I need to do extra, I can actually fit a bottle in my jersey pocket pretty easy. And you'll see I have a bottle in the bottom that actually has my raincoat in it. In a race this long and in the past, they've definitely had some issues with being super hot and then like snowing, you know, and so I'm definitely gonna have a raincoat with me, and that seemed like the easiest way to do it. Didn't want to do a big bag, didn't really want to have it in my pocket because it gets kind of hot, you know, and so keeping it under there, I think that's a good thing to do. Motherlode strap has got my tube and my multi-tool. In the top tube bag, I mostly have nutrition, then I have some tubeless tire repair kits. I also have a pump and a quick link, some other things. I was going to just bring the top tube bag, but I decided I really should bring 2 tubes, and I also brought a CO2 inflator. So I have a pump and a CO2 inflator. If I end up not being able to fix a flat with all of that, it's probably time to throw it in. I think that's a gamble you take, but that's kind of where I feel comfortable with in terms of preparation for repairs. So I think I have enough stuff. I sure hope so. I never usually have any problems with this bike, so it would be odd to have a problem here given where I've taken it. So I'm using the Oveja Negra Snack Pack XL for my top tube bag. I know not everyone's going to like the top tube bag. I've gotten really used to using it on a regular basis. I actually throw it on my road bike for the group rides and just use it all the time. I've gotten really used to reaching for nutrition that way. And it keeps a lot of the stuff that would be in my back pockets off of my body. And I've just come to prefer that. I've got the XL, which is great for bike packing, and it works good in this application too. But I would, if I was to buy one specifically for this race, I would definitely get a large, not an XL, because you can occasionally hit your knees. It's a little bit wide. But inside, I'm mostly carrying just a few gels. I might carry some bars too. Mostly the Huma brand gels. I don't know. They've been good for my stomach so far, apple cinnamon, so that's what I'm sticking with. And yeah, really easy to get in and out of. And then for GPS, computer, I mean, I use my phone a lot, but to pace myself and kind of keep everything in check, I'm using the Lezyne supercomputer GPS. So a lot of the same features of your more expensive Garmin's, and I'm a huge fan of Garmin, but could not pass up the price of these Lezyne computers, and it's been working great. So got a heart rate strap. It's telling me all the details I need to know, and it's proven to be pretty easy to use, although I haven't had it long. So I'll have that on there just for keeping things in check. I have switched to the Ergon SM E3 Pro saddle on this bike as well. I love it on my stash. I had the Brooks on here, as some of you may remember. But when I started really riding seriously again and kind of pushing myself for this event and for some other events this year, I couldn't get it to fit properly. The rails aren't long enough, and it just didn't feel quite right for me. I know they have to break in, but I kind of just didn't have time, and there was a saddle that I knew I loved, so I went ahead and got that one, and it's been working great. This was the only color I could get, but it doesn't really matter. I think it stands out. It looks cool. So that saddle is going away, and that's unfortunate, but hopefully Ergon will make something similar in the future. And then pedal wise, I am using the Crank Brothers Candy Ones. This is their lowest end candy. It's light, it's cheap, it will not last long, but you know, it works fine. It sheds mud really well, and it'll be light and good for this event. So we'll see what I do in the future, but for this, I figured that was a decent investment. Gearing wise, that's the big thing everyone talks about for Crusher and for other gravel events like this, and I'm using the stock gearing. So 42 big ring and 28 small ring, and then 1136 in the rear. And I've done some pretty big climbs on this bike, and I think that's adequate gearing. Any lower, and I'm kind of not moving anymore, so I shouldn't need more than that. There will be people that have a lot less gearing than I do, but that's what I've got. The bike, I'm still on the down tube, or the bar end shifters, and they work fine. You know, on a course that's real rolly, like we did the Angry Horse a few weeks ago, I was having to shift in and out of my big chain ring a lot, going up and then down hills, and so I think it is slower. It's not quite as convenient in this application, but it works fine. And where we're mostly climbing the Crusher, I don't think it's going to bother me too much. The TRP brakes are still working good. I just swapped out the pads finally for the first time, and yeah, I really haven't had any problems with them, honestly. They're still a little noisy, like I said in my first review about 2 years ago now, but they work fine, and so not changing those at all. The bike in total, without the bags and the computer and everything, but with cages and with pedals, weighs 25 pounds almost exactly with this tire setup. So, you know, that's on the heavy side a little bit, but that's actually pretty light. I've gotten it down a little lighter than it was originally. And, you know, out of the group of guys that's going from this area, I think the lightest, if not one of the lightest. So I really won't have any excuses when it comes to the climbs, because total setup weight for me is probably going to be lower than the rest of the guys that I'm going to be kind of riding with. So the weight, I think, is going to be just fine, and I think I'm going to be pretty happy with this setup. But like I said, we'll see what happens. In terms of accessories, you guys will see my kit, but I've got a Scott helmet, pretty basic one, but it's got the MIPS. I think this helmet retails for like $70, which I think is a good deal for the MIPS. It's got kind of a built-in visor sort of thing, sort of a road-inspired mountain bike helmet. I don't know. It's been comfortable for me, and so So I like it, but it's a fairly new helmet. A couple months on that one. I will be using some Scott sunglasses. I can't remember what the model is on these, but these have been a lot more comfortable than some of the other ones I was using. These are kind of a semi-sport glass. They're not a full-on high-performance cycling sunglasses, but you know, they're about a $70 sunglass, and they're comfortable. They stay on my face, and they have a pretty big field of view, so I like that. I'm using my Bontrager cutoff finger gloves, which I've had for a long time. Just keep my hands comfortable. And then, yeah, going into clipless, back into clipless again. The main reason I did was just to be able to have, I won't say more efficiency, I'll just say, you know, a better pedaling feel. I got back on my road bike on clipless, was starting to train really hard, and just really like the pedaling feel. So I wanted a mountain bike shoe that felt like a road shoe. And so I ended up going for the Bontrager Cambions, which have a full carbon sole. I think this is the blingiest shoe I've ever owned in my whole life. But they are rated for a 12 out of 14 stiffness scale. I don't know why Bontrager's rating to 14. Seems random, but their XXX shoes are 14 out of 14. I didn't feel like I needed the highest end shoe, but I did want a stiff carbon sole. And from this down to the next one, I think it's a pretty big jump in terms of loss of stiffness. So they're definitely the lightest clipless shoes I've ever owned, and I found them quite comfortable. The single boas worked just fine, and of course the blue collar stands out. It's cool when you're out. If you're in Lycra, you might as well stand out. Might as well be flashy. And then I've got my heart rate monitor as well. So that is the gear that I'm using, and hopefully it's the right choice.